Delegates Belcastro, Cardin, Stein. I want to thank you very much for joining us tonight. This pandemic, we know, is having a devastating effect on our community, both on our health individually and collectively, as well as on our economy. In order to keep us safe and relying on our scientific and health experts, it's really important to adhere to the executive orders that have been announced by the governor. Staying at home if possible, adhering to physical distancing, and also wearing a mask when inside. We know that so many people are in pain and have so many questions about the resources available to help individuals and small businesses. And that's why we've asked this esteemed panel to join us tonight. So I'd like to thank all of our panelists for taking time out of their very busy days and evenings to join us. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Delegate Dana Stein, who will take it from here. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Shelley. And I too want to thank the elected officials and the agency leaders and other staff who are participating. And thanks to everyone who's joined the call, joined the meeting, who submitted questions. Some questions that were submitted in advance will be addressed during the town hall. We'll do our best to respond to all other questions by email. And now I'd like to introduce my colleague, Delegate John Carter.
Thank you, Dana, and thank you, Shelley. And it's a pleasure to be part of this opportunity here to help give some information to small businesses. What we're trying to do is to bring a national perspective, a state perspective, and a local perspective to give as broad and holistic a source of information as we can. Our guests include Senator Ben Cardin, Secretary Schultz of the Department of Commerce, Andrew Fulgenetti and Michael Harrison from the Department of Labor, and County Executive John Olszewski, as well as Will Anderson, Director of Baltimore County, Department of Economic and Workforce Development. We look forward to hearing from all of them, and we look forward to hopefully trying to respond to your concerns and your questions. And now it's my chance to introduce Delegate Lisa Belcastro.
Hi everyone, this is Delegate Lisa Belcastro. I want to thank each of you for joining us tonight. At the end of the town hall, there's going to be a slide with all of our contact details on it. If you have a question that wasn't answered during the town hall, please contact us. We will follow up with you. I'm happy to have the opportunity to introduce Senator Ben Cardin. He's here with us tonight to talk about the federal response to the COVID-19 crisis, which includes the CARES Act. And with that, I want to thank you, Senator Cardin, for taking the time to talk with us and answer the questions of District 11 residents.
Well, Lisa, thank you very much. And to Shelley, Dana, and John, it's a pleasure to be with you all on District 11 Town Hall meeting through this webinar. It really is an opportunity to get information out to people in our district and in our state. So it's good to be with you, and thank you very much. My first message, of course, is everyone needs to stay safe. We have Team Maryland. Our team, our federal team, is working very closely with Governor Hogan and the state team, our state legislators. We're working very closely with the county exec, Olszewski, and his team, with municipal leaders throughout the state. So your federal team, including Senator Van Hollen and Congressman Sarbanes, is working very closely with us to make sure that we coordinate our response. Number one priority is healthcare, taking care of the healthcare of the people of this country. So recently, Congress passed the CARES Act, and we put more money into it last week. This is a $2.7 trillion program, $2.7 trillion. That's more than the federal government spends in a given year on discretionary spending, including military spending. But our first priority was healthcare. So we put a lot of money into the healthcare facilities, into dealing with testing and dealing with all the needs that we have to make sure that money is not the reason we don't deal with this public health pandemic. Secondly, we wanted to give money and did give money to the states. And I want to mention that because state and local government are really stressed today. Your revenues are really off and your needs are much greater. So we provided in the CARES Act $2.3 billion to state and local governments in Maryland. Baltimore County will receive about $144 million directly from that aid package. We also provided money for your schools. Baltimore County will receive somewhere between $30 and $40 million from that fund. Money for the CDBG program. We'll receive over $2 million in that category. I point that out because that's the first installment. We need to do more to help state and local governments if you're going to be able to continue to provide essential services at the state and local level, because you got to balance your budget. And without the revenues, if you're going to maintain services, you've got to get help. And that's where the federal government should come in. But the third part of this, in addition to dealing with the health problem and dealing with the state and local, was to deal with the economy. And we did provide money directly for individuals. We did that through the unemployment insurance system and through the refund stimulus checks that people are receiving electronically, I hope, through the IRS. But we also provided direct help to businesses. Large businesses got loans. Small businesses got 3 new programs that have gotten a lot of attention of late. And that's what I know is the focus for this meeting. So let me just cover it very, very quickly. There are 3 new programs to help small businesses. These are generally businesses under 500. But for the first time, we include nonprofits have full eligibility for these programs. For the first time, we include the gig economy. We include the self-employed, the independent contractor. They're fully qualified to receive help under the small business programs. The program that gets the most attention is the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP. We originally put $349 billion into this program, and last week we added another $310 billion. It's a substantial amount of money. It covers 8 weeks of payroll plus other expenses. It's done through a 7A loan through a financial institution, but if the money is used in the appropriate time period, the loan can be partially or completely forgiven. It is a program that has attracted millions of small businesses in the country. There's already been close to 2 million small business loans given out under the PPP program. In Maryland, where well over 30,000 small businesses have gotten loans approved under the PPP program. The average size of those loans are somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000. That program is up and running right now. It is likely to be oversubscribed again, and we'll probably have to put more money into the program. Your processing of that loan depends very much on how your financial institution processes the papers with the Small Business Administration. And we've heard from a lot of businesses that they got shut out in the first round. The problem was that the underserved community, the minority businesses, the small businesses that didn't have connections with banks, or very small businesses didn't have the financial connections with a bank to get those loans processed in a timely way. We took steps on the renewal of the funding to provide a set aside of $60 billion that will go to the small lenders, so that the smaller lenders, so they can get to the underserved community. We hope that will work. The second program, which is equally important, doesn't get quite as much attention, is the Economic Injury Disaster Loans, the EIDL program. Smaller businesses generally use that program. It was known when Ellicott City flood occurred, the businesses there used these EIDL loans in order to keep themselves afloat. Smaller businesses generally like these loans because they cover more than just payroll. They cover the working capital, they cover your inventory, and you can use that to help get back on your feet from a disaster. But we changed the program to include a grant up to $10,000 under the EIDL program. That's a grant. It's not a loan, it's a grant. And that grant can be used for whatever you want it to be used for. It allows you to have much better control over your cash flow. Very popular. We've had about 20,000 Maryland companies that have gotten this grant up to $10,000. The average size of the business is between 4 and 5 workers. In addition, we have a loan forgiveness for those who have 7A loans or 504 loans with the Small Business Administration or had these loans taken out within the next 6 months. You can get loan forgiveness for up to 6 months under those loans. So there are 3 tools available, and we want to make sure all eligible small businesses in our community can take advantage of those programs. So I'm pleased to try to get this information out. We want you to know that if you have any difficulties, please let us know about it. We want to make sure that every eligible small business can take advantage of these programs. and get back on their feet. Best thing we can do, though, to help small businesses is to get this coronavirus under control, stop the spread, get people back in our community, fully participating in our economy. And of course, that's been one of our principal goals. Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you. We have a bunch of questions that were submitted beforehand, and then a couple of that have come up as you've been speaking. So I'm going to just pose one from Benjamin, who lives in 21208. Some banks have been very slow in processing PPP. How will future aid be changed to make sure they're responsive to nonprofits and others who do not have stockholders? So I wonder if Senator, if you could respond to that question from Benjamin.
When we reauthorized the program, we provided $60 billion that must be lent through what we call basically mission-driven lenders. These are the smaller community banks. These are the minority depository institutions. These are the CDFIs. These are the farm credit bureaus. These institutions have now been allocated a specific sum of money that under the PPP program. We think the major problem why a lot of small businesses were unable to access funds is the fact that the large banks gave priority to their priority customers. These are the larger small businesses. A bank said, look, if I can make one loan of $2 million, it's certainly better than trying to make a lot of smaller loans. So the smaller businesses got sort of shut out. Now that we put $60 billion can only be lent out through these small lenders and who have a mission-driven purpose, we expect that the underserved communities will have an easier time getting access to these funds. We know that the minority depositories institutions are going to serve minority businesses. They're going to get a better share out of this. We know that our small community banks are much more interested in the smaller businesses. And we saw that in Maryland, where a lot of loans were processed through community banks. So we have now guaranteed that those institutions will get $60 billion of these PPP loans to make.
Okay, thank you. This is from Craig in 21117. Senator McConnell has opposed any help for state and local governments. Instead, he suggested that states declare bankruptcy. What are the prospects for the federal government coming to the aid of the states? And the state of Maryland is a huge employer, as you well know, including public services. Should he expect to become unemployed?
Well, we have to. First of all, we already have. I want to make that clear. Senator McConnell, when he brought the original CARES Act to the floor of the United States Senate, if you recall, we objected to it. We said, look, we want a bipartisan bill. We don't want or just a Republican bill. His original bill did not include any money for any significant money for state and local government. We changed it. Both Democrats and Republicans in the Senate working together added state and local government to the CARES package. As I pointed out, $150 billion in stabilization funds were provided to state and local government. Maryland's share of that's $2.3 billion. That's coming in through the CARES Act and would not have been there if Senator McConnell had his way. We also provided money for our schools. We provided money for our hospitals. We provided money for creative solutions to the homeless and the housing problems. We provided money for the community development block grants. We provided money for childcare. So we provided money to states and local government in the original CARES bill, but it's not enough. There were a couple areas that we did not cover. We did not cover revenue loss. We only covered the damages caused by COVID-19. State of Maryland, Baltimore County is going to have tremendous loss of revenues. The federal government needs to be there because if we're not, will Baltimore County be able to maintain its police force, its fire protection? Will the state of Maryland be able to continue to provide the essential support for our school systems? All of that is at risk if the federal government doesn't step up and help state and local governments deal with their revenue loss. The point is this: Baltimore County, state of Maryland must have a balanced budget. So you got one or two choices. You're not going to raise taxes. That's highly unlikely. You're going to have to cut services if you don't get those revenues made up through the help of the federal government. So we are committed. The leadership, the Democratic leadership in the House, Speaker Pelosi has talked about this. And here's the good news. President Trump has talked about helping state and local government in the next stimulus package. So we are optimistic that Leader McConnell will not have his way, that we'll be able to negotiate a bipartisan package that will include aid for state and local governments.
Okay, thank you. This is from Chanel in 21286. Are there any plans for individuals to receive a second stimulus payment in the future if the social distancing continues to remain in effect with many job closures?
Well, President Trump has talked about some additional individual stimulus checks. It's a little bit early to tell what form that will take. We know that the refund checks in your tax from the IRS has certainly helped people deal with the financial challenges. Our main job, though, is to keep people employed and to have a social safety net, and unemployment insurance is one of the best protections we have. We provided significant improvement to the unemployment insurance system. I think first we have to make sure that we maintain that protection we have for the individual who has lost his or her job or has been cut back significant number of hours, to make sure they have adequate income in order to support their families. That should be our top priority. We'll see how the economy responds, but I think most of us believe we're going to have to do more to stimulate the economy. What I hope we will do is invest in projects such as roads, bridges, transit systems. We need to have more connectivity in our schools. We need to have a more modern utility grids in our community. We need to improve our water infrastructure. So there's a lot of critical investments we can do that will not only stimulate the economy, but will help make our country deal with the needs of our community. So we're hopeful that we'll have a balanced package moving forward. We recognize that this COVID-19 has had a devastating impact on our economy, and it's not going to end anytime soon.
Thank you. I'm going to take one live question from Heidi. She says the SBA site says they're unable to accept new applications at this time for the EIDL program that you spoke about earlier. And it's based on available appropriations. Folks who have already submitted their applications will continue to be processed on a first come, first served basis. Do you anticipate that this will be reopened?
Well, thanks for that question. I am aware of that. We have some conversations tomorrow with the SBA. We're going to encourage them to accept more applications. They are backlogged over 1 million applications for EIDL grants and loans that they have not processed yet. But when we provided $50 billion or more funds for the EIDL program, for the loan program, that can allow up to $300 billion of loans. And we think a lot of the applications will be coordinated with the payroll protection program loans. So we are going to encourage them to open up that window again. And again, under the EIDL program, you can get a grant, and there's funds available for those grants. So I recognize they've made that decision. It's not a permanent decision. We're going to encourage them to open up the window as soon as possible to accept new applications for loans and grants.
Okay, thank you. Final question for right now. This is from Dory in Lutherville in 21093. The CARES Act allows 1099 independent contractors to file for unemployment. They're a small 501c3 and are a reimbursable employer. They are now liable for those costs, and they don't have the funds to cover those expenses. And this has been quite a scramble. They've been giving conflicting information about whether or not the federal government will be reimbursing the state or the employer for these kinds of costs. And they intend to file for PPP, but missed the first round. Do you have any clarification or advice for them?
Well, first, in regards to the unemployment for any of your workers that you have to lay off or furlough as a result of COVID-19, they absolutely qualify for the federal program for unemployment benefits. It is 100% at the cost of the federal government, particularly if these are self-employed individuals or the gig economy that are now going on unemployment. The unemployment system is managed through the state of Maryland. I know you have people on this call who can answer some of these questions. So the state of Maryland has a system in place to handle the regular unemployment benefits the state of Maryland provides, plus the enhanced benefits given under the CARES Act, in which the federal government will reimburse the state 100% of the cost. So for the new eligibles, the federal government's paying 100% of the cost. For the extended benefits of the extra weeks. The federal government's paying 100% of the cost of that. For the extra $600 a week, the federal government's paying the entire cost. So it will not be assessed against the trust fund or the employers in regards to those benefits. So if you're now eligible for unemployment benefits and you were not under the state program, the state will process it. You will get your unemployment checks, but it will not be charged back to the employer. The federal government will pay the full amount. In regards to the payroll protection program, it's given through a private bank. And I would just urge you to go to a bank that will give you the personal attention you need to make sure that your loan gets processed in a timely way. We have found that in many instances, your prior relationship with your bank was not at a high enough priority level for that bank to process your loan quickly. So I just urge you to talk to your bank, talk to the banking institutions, find a bank that's prepared to really process your loan quickly. It's not that difficult. It's 100% guaranteed by the federal government. The bank's paid for the processing fees. There's really no cost associated or risk associated to the lender, and they should accommodate you. But we have found that many of the lenders did prioritize their customers to the detriment of many.
Thank you. Now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Delegate Dana Stein.
Thank you, Shelley, and thank you, Senator Cardin, for joining us for the federal updates. And we appreciate all the work that you and other members of the Maryland delegation are doing on behalf of our residents and business. And for everyone on the call, feel free to reach out to him for any follow-up questions. Now we'll move on to the state level, and I'd like to welcome Secretary of Commerce Kelly Schultz, who will provide an update on Maryland's business response. Welcome, Secretary Schultz.
Great. Thank you very much for having me today. And I just want to acknowledge Senator Cardin for being on the call and addressing all of us. And I can't tell you how beneficial it has been over the course of the last several weeks to understand that Maryland has a federal delegation that's there to be able to assist us in our needs. And so I want to say thank you to Senator Cardin on my behalf and my team's behalf, actually. So thank you. I really think that that's how it all works together, right? Is to be able to make sure that all of the levels of government in a time like this where nobody has an understanding of how to get to the end result, and we've never gone through this type of a process before, to understand who our partners are at the federal, the state, the local levels. And it's been an extremely intriguing, interesting learning experience, but also very rewarding at the same time. Not to mention a little tiring at some points in time, and I would imagine that every single person on this call understands what I'm talking about. Because no matter what part it is that you have to play in this healthcare pandemic crisis, it really is, we're all dealing with some of the similar types of situations altogether. So just very briefly, and I'm happy to take some questions on this. We've had a good deal of input and coordination with the SBA at the federal level and the small business development centers here in the state of Maryland. The Department of Commerce has worked very, very closely with those SBD centers in order to be able to assist constituents on what those federal programs are. And so I'm very thankful of that. At the state level, there were 3 programs, 2 very specific to small businesses that the governor had announced as applications being open on March 23rd. Those were the grant program of a grant of up to $10,000 for businesses with under 50 employees, and then the loan program with $75 million of loans of up to $50,000 with 50 or fewer employees. It's a little bit of a tongue twister, sorry about that. So we had initially with the opening of the applications on March 23rd, at the end of the day on March 24th, we realized that after thousands of applications, we needed to be able to quickly procure and develop a brand new workflow system and a database, which we did very quickly in under than 2 weeks to be able to get those IT systems up and running. So we're very grateful for that. And then at that same time, we realized that we needed to bring on additional personnel in order to be able to manage the 20,000+ grantees applications and the over 9,000 loan applications that were in the system. So we brought on about 150 state employees that were teleworking from other sister agencies to join our team. And we've been onboarding them and training them on a brand new system that we're all getting accustomed to in the processing moving forward. At this point in time, we have almost $27 million allocated in the grant program, with roughly a little under than 2,700 grant applications that have been marked as approved to move forward to the managerial and approval process within that arena. So that is moving along. It's certainly not moving along as quickly as we would like for it to move along, but bringing on additional personnel and continuing to increase and improve the workflow system that an entire agency plus an entire agency's worth of individuals is working as diligently as they possibly can around the clock and on the weekends in order to be able to support our small business community. And I'm really proud of the state employees that have dedicated their time and their energy towards this effort. And at some point in time, I'm going to be able to share some of the extraordinary stories that come along with this. But I also want to talk a little bit about moving towards recovery. And that was the news that the governor had announced at the end of last week on Friday about the governor taking on his internal recovery review team and what it means at the Department of Commerce to be a part of that. And what that means is that the Department of Commerce has formed over the course of the last 3+ weeks, 13 different advisory groups of stakeholders from key industry sectors. And we first started the process with the tourism industry because they were the first and perhaps hardest hit from the closures and the stay-at-home orders. And we started looking at what that meant as tourism in and of itself. Hopefully many of you know that the Department of Tourism resides in the Department of Commerce, as well as our Maryland State Arts Council. So we formed a larger tourism group made up of many different individuals and specific industry groups to include restaurants and bars, accommodations, retailers, attractions, tourism transportation like charter buses, destinations, and sporting events. And really kind of branched out to be able to bring in a lot of information on what it would mean for these businesses to reopen in a timely manner. So when the governor said that it was time to go back to business, how we could very quickly, efficiently, effectively, and above all else, in a very safe and healthy manner, open up these businesses to the general public. And that's what these groups are busy doing right now. In addition to that, looking at some of the possible regulatory barriers and logistical barriers, like needing to get health officials to approve occupancy, for example, or looking at what we have to do to rehire a local workforce or restocking the goods and relaunching the services. And I'm very complimentary of the federal government in being able to provide additional resources to those that are on unemployment insurance with the additional $600 a week with the Pandemic Unemployment Act. But I will say that the business community is having a difficult time even now with some vacancies in specific industry groups, hiring a workforce because of the ability for them to obtain possibly a higher weekly rate of pay while on unemployment insurance. So those are some of the obstacles and the barriers that we're looking at, and some of the additional industry groups that we have put together, the manufacturing industry, which has been a very interesting group because some of the manufacturers are open and some of them are closed, depending on their basis of essential or non-essential, and looking to create ways with our manufacturing partners and stakeholders to talk about how to push buy local type of Maryland products that are produced here. And that's been also a very interesting process moving forward, because we've been able to put together the Maryland Innovation Innovation Grant that provides up to $100,000 to manufacturers who are capable of retooling perhaps some of their business lines and purchasing additional equipment in order to be able to address some of those critical needs items that MEMA, the Maryland Emergency Management Agency, and the Maryland Department of Health have put forward as some of our top priorities for purchasing and producing personal protective equipment, as well as ventilators and other items that are on that critical needs list for our healthcare professionals and first responders. Today, there was an announcement that went out from the governor's office about 20 manufacturers in the state of Maryland who have been able to innovatively look at and review their internal process and retool as needed to be able to guarantee a production of that type of equipment for the state of Maryland specifically. So we're very excited about what we've been able to do locally in response to our need for PPE production and sustainment. And I think with that, I will look at some additional questions that may come about.
Thank you, Secretary Schultz, for that overview. And we realize that the state has been very responsive in trying to meet the needs of businesses of all sizes to the pandemic. One question that someone had submitted is, will there be any more grant funds available for Maryland businesses, either through new programs or to the extent that any of the programs that you identified are oversubscribed? Do you know if there will be any further state funding for programs that would assist Maryland businesses?
You know, we're looking at the possibility of that. So one of the reasons why we left the application process open until April 6th, knowing that the program was probably overprescribed, even before we were able to run some diagnostics and some data on it, was that we wanted to make sure that if there were any additional funding, whether it be federal funds, state funds, or if the counties wanted to help to participate, that we had a process, that a new process that had been put in place, and it's very effective, and applications that are in line to be able to be reviewed by whomever wants to review them with an additional amount of funding that's coming in. So one of our priorities was to be able to make sure that if we had Maryland businesses that were in the queue to be reviewed, that we had the necessary resources to accommodate them with additional resources. So we're consistently looking at that as a possibility.
Okay, thank you, Secretary. Good to know. And actually following up on the fact that, as you said, many businesses have submitted applications under the different programs. Can you comment on the fact that in a lot of cases, businesses who did submit applications haven't heard about the status of their applications and realize they may be pending? This is actually a question from Gary, who's from zip code 21093, but is there any way that they can get information about the status of their application, even if it's just to say it's pending?
Yeah, so hopefully everybody that has put in an application has been able to review in our one-stop portal. If they have not, then they need to send an email to secretary.commerce@maryland.gov. But the process that the majority of the applicants see is that they see that in the one-stop portal it says in review. And in reality, the in review means that it's at the very beginning part of our workflow process. So it's kind of in the queue. So once it starts moving through the queue and all of the thousands of applicants before it get get pushed forward into a further review process, you receive an email once it gets into the process where it's past that initial queue of the initial review phase. So if anybody cannot, and people are very concerned that it's still in review, and the only thing that I can say about in review is that your application may be in a point in the queue in which it was received, that there are thousands of applications that are being reviewed prior to that. And that's just the unfortunate truth in the matter.
Okay, all right, thank you. Joseph in zip code 21208 has a question of, will the department be publishing which businesses are getting grants or loans under the different programs that the state has established?
We have not been publishing specific businesses, only because we've been publishing those that have come through, or we've been accepting the applications as they've come through based on the first come, first served basis. We have not considered publishing all of the thousands of businesses that have received that, although I would assume that that would at some point in time be a public document.
Okay, all right. And then last question is just a follow-up on Secretary Schultz. You mentioned how your department has set up a number of advisory groups on different industry sectors to provide advice department on how best to, when we're in a position when the governor is able to announce that different sectors of the economy are able to reopen for business, that how best that they can do that. And I just wanted to ask if someone's not a member of this advisory group, but is interested in providing suggestions and feedback, can they contact your office directly to offer their?
I would love that. I would love that. And as a matter of fact, I would love it if they sent that information directly to me. And so my contact information is Kelly, Kelly, .Schulz, SCHULZ, as in zebra, no T, at maryland.gov. And I am coordinating, on an hourly basis with our task force and advisory group teams, so that they have some updated information for them to be able to consider and put out there. And I just want everybody to know that these are recommendations from industry members specifically. Most of them are very small businesses, and their goal is to be able to say, hey, listen, we can operate under these types of circumstances, and we're going to agree under these types of circumstances. And we want to be able to make sure that we have the health of our community above all else. And they've been really spectacular working with them, and being able to provide our office at the Department of Commerce some guidance as to how to address some of the governor's internal team and moving forward on what they can look at as considerations for the possible reopening.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thank you, Secretary Schultz, for all that you and the department are doing to try to help businesses get through this crisis as much as possible. So thank you again. And next up, we would like to welcome Andrew Fulginiti from the Department of Labor, who will talk about unemployment insurance and the new Beacon portal. So welcome, Andrew.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I appreciate the introduction, and happy to be here and be a part of this discussion. These forums are great opportunities for the department and for all the state agencies and federal partners to get the information out to the people that matter and the people in need. So I appreciate being a part of this. I'll briefly go over some of the updates I have for you regarding particularly unemployment insurance and our new platform and the Beacon portal that you mentioned, to kind of give you an idea of the sheer volume and the unprecedented number of claims that the department has been processing the last couple of weeks. Since March 9th, we've received and processed about 348,000 new claims, which, as you can imagine, is certainly more than we received in the entire year of 2019 and likely combined 2018. And we've made over 522,000 weekly benefit payments, totaling nearly $286 million. So that kind of gives you some perspective on, the volume of claims we're processing, the number of people in the state that are having, to face that economic reality due to this pandemic. And I would just say, we are working truly around the clock. Our team here at the Maryland Department of Labor and our Division of Unemployment Insurance to be able to address those needs of individuals for all Marylanders. We understand that, a lot of people are facing really tough times right now, and we're going to make sure that we do everything we can to make sure we get them those benefits that they deserve as quickly as possible. So as Senator Cardin mentioned at the top of the hour here, the federal government passed the CARES Act back there in March, and it expanded unemployment insurance with 3 new programs. One, it expanded just the eligibility under the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program to individuals who previously would not have been eligible for regular unemployment insurance benefits. So those individuals are the self-employed, independent contractors, gig workers, and people with limited work history or nonprofits. So we now have the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. That was part of our rollout last Friday with the Beacon One-Stop Portal, that individuals can now go on and apply for that PUA program to receive regular unemployment insurance benefits. Also under the CARES Act, as the Senator mentioned, is the federal pandemic unemployment compensation. So that's $600 per week benefit on top of the PUA and regular unemployment benefits. So that is a $600 per week flat amount that's going to go and be paid and distributed on top of regular benefits that an individual may be eligible for. There's no separate application for that. It'll automatically be dispersed when an individual receives their benefits. And then the third program is the extension of unemployment benefits to individuals who may have exhausted their regular state benefits. So in the state of Maryland, people are eligible in a benefit year for up to 26 weeks of unemployment insurance benefits. The federal government created this new program to extend that to 13 additional weeks. So individuals who are eligible for unemployment insurance benefits will now be eligible for a full 39 weeks of unemployment insurance benefits. And that also includes, if individuals meet that criteria, they'll also be getting that $600 plus up payment. So as I mentioned on Friday, this past Friday, April 24th, we launched Beacon, our new one-stop online application portal, where individuals can now file their claims entirely online, reducing the need for them to have to call our call centers. This portal is designed not just for the programs I kind of described under the CARES Act, but also individuals that may have previously not been able to file online and had to call one of our claims processing centers. So those individuals, the federal government, the military, individuals that may have worked and earned wages in multiple states or had multiple jobs in the previous 18 months, they now all meet the criteria to file through our new Beacon One-Stop Portal. Obviously, the launch of our portal, as everyone is likely aware, did not go as smoothly as we had hoped. We had partnered with a vendor to build this new program because it is a brand new program. It's not something that we're not modifying an old system. It is a brand new program that had to be built from the ground up, and we partnered with a vendor to put this together, and we were hopeful that it was going to roll out smoothly because people have been waiting for a very long time to get these benefits they deserve. And unfortunately, it didn't roll out smoothly as we had hoped. Our vendors constantly working on technical fixes to our system, but we've implemented some new procedures that we think are going to help with the system and address the capacity issues. Obviously, we had on Friday about a couple 100,000 people try and log on and access those resources all at once. So the site was unable to handle that load, and we're constantly working to improve that and address that. So one of the things we've done is we introduced a new virtual waiting system. So if anyone has logged on to the site and tried to go access the Beacon platform, you will see that you immediately go into what is their virtual waiting room. This is designed obviously to optimize the performance of the Beacon portal. So it's to prevent the site from crashing and slowdowns and kind of control the flow of traffic in and out of the site. And the reason this is designed to kind of optimize the user's experience once they do have access to the site. This allows individuals, once they're into our platform, to fill out their information without slowdowns, upload documentation, and complete their application in a timely and efficient manner without having the technical glitches that we were experiencing over the weekend. We understand that, it's more waiting, and certainly we can understand the frustration. We're hopeful that as we do maintenance on the site each evening going forward, that we can eventually get to the point where we no longer need this virtual waiting room. But right now, that is the setup, right? And we're encouraging people to use off hours, non-peak hours, when they're accessing this platform. We'll be bringing the site down from 1 to 3 a.m. Each night for the next couple of days. So you'll have 22 hours in the day to try and access that platform. So we encourage people to utilize the off hours to try and get shorter wait times. And also, I just would like to just wrap up and mention that we do, our call centers, while you no longer need to utilize those to file your claims, they are fully operational. We're continuing with extended hours. They're open from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. and on Saturday from 8 to noon. And we continue to increase the staffing at our call centers. We've brought on a vendor that is bringing 200 additional call center employees to increase our capacity and handle the volume of people that need some, their answers to their questions. And we've also are hiring 100 new employees, and are in the process of transferring about 150 state employees from within labor and different sister agencies to handle those capacity needs. And so with that, I'll just wrap up and say that please, the best resource for you when you're looking for information on unemployment insurance is our webpage. It's mdunemployment.com. Please exhaust all the resources on that webpage. We've put together some really helpful frequently asked question pages. We've got about 8 or 9, 10 different frequently asked questions pages that are quite exhaustive and answer a lot of the questions that individuals are facing. So we encourage you to utilize that website, go through those pages. Hopefully you won't need to call in or use the web portal to answer some of your questions. We can have those answered and addressed on the web page. With that, I'll turn it over and hopefully answer some of the questions.
Thank you very much, Andrew. This is Delegate John Carden starting right now. And we want to thank you and Michael Harrison, the Policy Director, for coming in and joining our group and being able to provide such important information, as well as information about the new Beacon portal. We really do appreciate that. Some of the questions, I have 3 questions I'm going to try and get through. I know we only have a few minutes to do them because we're going to be hearing from County Executive Johnny O in a few minutes. But you've already covered a little bit of it, but let's see if we can dig a little bit deeper. Many folks who have been told to reach out to the unemployment office by phone cannot get through. You've indicated that you're trying to staff up the call centers. What if they can't get in touch before deadlines because of the delay? Is there any advice you can give?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Yep, as I mentioned, we are staffing up. We're staffing up our call centers. We're increasing the capacity so we can meet the needs and demand of people who have questions. But yes, in regards to the deadlines, so there is some messaging on our webpage. We are waiving deadlines for individuals. We know that people are concerned and are not being able to access those resources as quickly as they need to meet certain requirements. So any deadline that you're going to receive via USPS, Postal Service or on the webpage, those deadlines are being waived. We're not going to hold certain individuals, to those deadlines if they weren't able to speak to one of our representatives. So we understand the situation, and we're going to be flexible when it comes to those deadlines.
Thank you very much. Two more quick questions. The first is to apply for those who have already filed unemployment claims, perhaps weeks ago. When can they expect to hear from the state or to get the benefits paid?
Yes, so it's a good question. So there's no blanket answer I can provide as far as a turnaround time for an individual from start to finish. And the only reason is because these processes are at least the initial processing of a claim. It can vary. Unemployment insurance is a very complex process. There's a lot of factors that go into determining one's eligibility. There's contact that has to be made and interviews that have to be done with both the individual and the employers listed on their application. So there's a lot that goes into the initial processing and the adjudication of these claims. So obviously, due to the sheer volume we're experiencing, there have been some delays. Prior to the pandemic, we were typically processing claims, and claimants were receiving their payments about 21 days. We are still having individuals receive that turnaround time. However, obviously, again, with the sheer number, there are people that are seeing significant delays. We're working really hard to be able to turn these around as quickly as possible, and we're hopeful that with the new staffing capacities in our call centers and the new one-stop portal, as we're rolling that out and smoothing out the fixes there, that those are able to help expedite getting these much needed benefits to people in the state of Maryland who are very much in need of them.
Thank you very much. And I know how frustrating it is for everybody, so I appreciate that answer. This is the last question, and I've actually gotten a lot of calls on this in my office. I'm sure that my colleagues have as well. If you're self-employed, you don't receive a W-2 or a 1099, but you do report income and expenses on a tax return, how do you file, well, whether it's the federal information that they may be looking for that you may have some insights in, or particularly in your case, unemployment? In other words, to apply for unemployment, what documents do you need? Do you use? If you have to prove 2019 income, but you haven't filed your 2019 tax returns yet, what do you use, or how long do you have? Can you do it retroactively?
Yeah, so this is a great question. It's one I have seen quite a few times as well, since we rolled the program out on Friday. We did just recently get some new guidance from the U.S. Department of Labor, as this is a federal program, so we're kind of dependent on their guidance when it comes to things like this. They did just provide us with some information. So, you are going to have to be able to verify, wages earned and paid during the 2019 calendar year. That's going to be the base period that we're looking at when, processing and verifying wages. So if you haven't filed your 2019 taxes, you're going to need to provide some additional documentation to show and verify wages. Some examples, this is certainly not limited to, but some examples are, state agency wage records, paycheck stubs, bank receipts, any business records, ledgers, contracts, invoices, any type of billing statements. Those are the types of documents that people are going to need to collect and upload into our system to show wages earned, wages paid, and for us to be able to verify those and make a wage determination based on that information.
Thank you, Andrew. And if folks have any more questions.
Wait, Lisa, we have another minute, and I just got an online question. Let's try and squeeze one more in for Andrew if we can. Sorry about that. If someone has wiggle room for now, should they wait to apply for unemployment insurance? If so, how long will they still be eligible from the point of separation? Deb asked that online just now.
So I'm not. Are you talking about like if a business has wiggle room? Is that the question? How long should they wait to apply?
Well, if I would imagine if the individual doesn't have to apply because they have some flexibility with the amount of money they can use, should they wait for a month? Should they do it right away?
I would encourage them to apply, you know, as soon as possible. I mean, if they're worried about there being restrictions or a deadline passing or they can't apply, that is not the case. Benefits are retroactive, so we're just gonna have to verify, you know, you're eligible to apply the day after you became unemployed or saw, you know, a reduction in wages due to this pandemic. So I would encourage them to apply to have their eligibility determined and have our processors look into it. I think hopefully that is the question.
Hi, Delegate. This is Kelly Schultz from the Department of Commerce, and I so appreciate all of the information coming from the Department of Labor. And what I would like to also say is that from what I hear from the businesses that are asking for the clarification, or the employees that are asking for the clarification, is that there is a retroactive capacity for the employees to be able to apply. There is a huge surge on the system right now, and if they don't need to do that application right now today, there may be the possibility for them to be able to do the application in a week from now, if it's not something, being able to understand that there is a retroactive activity to the date of their separation from their employer. So I just wanted to put that statement out there for that.
Thank you for that. And I apologize, Lisa Belcastro, for interrupting you. Thank
No
you,
problem.
Secretary Schultz.
No problem. We'll try this again. Thank you, Andrew, so much. And if folks have any more questions regarding their situations, please contact the Department of Labor or one of our offices. We'd be happy to help facilitate that connection. Next, I'm really happy to welcome County Executive Johnny Washevsky. He's going to be joined by Will Anderson, who is the Director of Economic and Workforce Development. They're going to give us a local update on the response and resources available in Baltimore County.
Hey, thanks, Delegate. Thanks, team. Really appreciate the opportunity. Good evening to everyone. I hope everyone is staying healthy and safe. Just to start with a word of encouragement to continue to practice social distancing and follow those other orders that are out there. We know it's getting harder on all of us every day, especially those of us who are extroverts like me, but we are flattening the curve, which is important because we're not out of the woods yet, and our actions are helping us get there. So I want to again thank you, Senator Hellerman, Delegates Cardin, Stein, and Belcastro for organizing tonight. Senator Cardin, thank you for being on the call and for all the federal relief provided so far. We truly appreciate it. Secretary Schultz, thank you for being a partner and for being on the call, and to all the other officials, we really appreciate it. Special thanks to all the residents who have joined tonight as well. So quick update in Baltimore County. We declared a local state of emergency on March 13th, opening up our Emergency Operations Center a few days later on March 16th. And historically, our EOC is open for 3 to 5 days at a stretch to respond to things like severe weather. But our EOC has been open now for 44 days straight with no clear end in sight, and is working entirely virtually for the first time in its history, which is, I think, a sign of the unprecedented times that we're in. Although our work started well before we opened up the EOC, we got our first inquiry about COVID-19 on January 23rd, and we've been continuing to work since then. I won't walk through all the steps we've taken to date because I want to be respectful of your time, but anyone listening can find more information tonight at www.baltimorecounty.md.gov-news-coronavirus.html. I do want to highlight just a few changes to how we're managing county government in this crisis. We are responding to the food needs out there in Baltimore County who are facing food insecurity. To date, we have distributed over 925,000 individual meals since the pandemic hit. We've moved as much of our government operations virtually as possible. It hasn't always been smooth, but we're getting better at serving the general public, keeping almost all of our normal operations going, while as much as 70% of our non-public safety employees are working entirely remotely at this point. We created a county stat team, which has now been converted to a COVID stat team, and you can see their data on our dashboards daily on Baltimore County's website. We talk to our hospital systems on a regular basis and have a good sense of how our hospitals are managing their response to the pandemic. We are very confident that as we see things today, we're ready for any potential surge that's coming. Today, we also made a major announcement, which I will return to in just a second. But first, wanted to just say we introduced our fiscal 21 budget earlier this month. And to be honest with everyone listening, it's not the budget I had thought I'd be introducing before COVID-19. It includes a $40 million write-down in early April. It's a budget that focuses on our basics, educating our kids, keeping our neighborhood safe, and supporting our workforce, especially those providing essential services. Senator Cardin, you've been a true champion for us in DC. The CARES Act is definitely helping us meet our unanticipated needs. We're using it to stand up creative responses to COVID-19, but we know that we cannot use CARES money currently to backfill our current operations, and there do remain significant needs for operating supports. We do expect another revenue write-down as the county council works on their budget. The council is likely to make additional cuts. I've also told my department heads to prepare for mid-year cuts. The sad truth of all this is it will probably get worse before it gets better, especially if there is not additional direct aid or flexibility built into the CARES money we currently have. I mentioned the announcement earlier today, which is a help program for our small business community within a $10 million emergency relief grant fund. These are $15,000 grants from the Baltimore County Economic Development Fund, which will support 650 local businesses. It is made possible by the CARES dollar, so thank you again, Senator Cardin. These grants can be used for payroll, operating expenses, lease or rent payments, and inventory acquisition. But at least 30% of the grant must support payroll for employees who are not owners or part owners. And the entire point of this program is to support those who have not been able to access existing federal programs such as PPP. We also announced earlier today a contract trace investigator training program in partnership with our community college. This will help our workers get the skills they need to compete for the jobs. The county plans to hire 60 people by July 1st, again, made possible by the CARES dollar. So thank you again, Senator Cardin, and the entire federal delegation. A lot of the resources available to businesses and workers are federal and state programs. The business programs were hit especially and quickly hard. The program is no longer accepting new applications for the COVID-19 Small Business Relief Grant. On the UI system, I know we had some updates, but I wanted to just share with those listening, I am frustrated, along with residents, by the botched rollout, and I hope that we see an increased performance by the state's vendor. It's not acceptable to me or to the people we serve at all. The county has created a small business guide to help local businesses plug into those federal programs, and we are helping both businesses and individuals alike to navigate these systems. 100 businesses and 550 individuals were helped just last week. In closing, I will end where we started. I hope everyone continues to be safe and healthy, continue to practice social distancing, wear your mask, limit the spread of the virus. Thanks again to you, Senator Hedelman, Delegates Cardin, Stein, and Belcastro for convening this call, everyone who's on tonight, and to those who care enough about our community to join the call. We are here for you in Baltimore County, and we will continue to do whatever we can to support you as we move through this process together. Thank you very much.
All right, we are going to move forward with a couple of questions from the community, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Our first one is from Randy from 2117. And Randy says, as a future small business owner in the process of securing funding and preparing to open a franchise in District 11, will funding exist at any levels to assist new small businesses?
Wonderful question. I'm going to kick that one over to our Economic Development Director, Will Anderson.
Great, thank you, Mr. County Executive. Thanks for the question, Randy. The simple answer is yes, there will be funding available for small businesses as we come out of this. The county has a number of programs, in addition to the new program that the county executive just mentioned that he kicked off today for the small business grants. We have our Boost Loan Program, which continues. We have our Small Business Loan Fund, which continues. We have our Small Business Resource Center, where small businesses can get help finding those loans. In addition to that, our partners at the state level have lending programs that will continue. So under Commerce, when Secretary Schultz gave the address of Business Express Maryland, that reaches some of their loan programs and through TEDCO. So those will continue. And then we have other specific ones in the county that are more oriented toward building improvements and those loans out of our planning center. But we do expect those programs to keep chugging forward.
Awesome. Our next question comes from Anna in 21208. And she asks, what has the county done to support childcare providers in the area? As of April 20th, we have not received any payment for care of essential personnel, and it doesn't seem to be happening this month.
Sure. Anna, thank you for the question and for what you do. I want to first say that we have ensured that all of our first responders are getting the care they need, thanks to people like you, so thank you for that. We have received complaints recently, like this one via our EOC. Child care providers are paid directly from the state, so we have referred the providers to our regional child care managers for Baltimore County. That is Amber Riley. Her number is 410-583-6204. You may also want to reach out to Stephen Hicks, who is the Assistant State Superintendent at MSDE, who's helping to coordinate these efforts. And Mr. Hicks's number is 410-767-0342. Of course, we're happy to troubleshoot issues and cut through red tape as needed, but these are state issues, and we're happy to support you, and we thank you again for the service you provide to our first responders.
Next question is from Ruth from 21208. Is there a long-term plan to assist vulnerable people who must stay at home for a prolonged period?
Thanks, Ruth. I can tell you that our county has developed a robust food resource plan for county residents, and that information is available on our website. Additionally, the county has implemented strategies to protect our most vulnerable populations, including the homeless. And so for vulnerable county residents who have case managers through existing programs, those are continuing to make existing contacts. We also have a hotline available and have hosted virtual resource fairs to share information. So I would just say it takes all of us to support those vulnerable populations, and we're here to support anyone in need. If you know of someone who's in need, you can also reach out to Baltimore County md.gov/food help for people who need that assistance as well.
And last question, this one coming in off the live feed. What do you think about extending an eviction moratorium, or what can be done to help folks who are going to be behind in rent?
Well, we know that evictions, both by local and state order, are currently suspended so long as we're under a state of emergency, which is the appropriate action. And we are actively working with one of our standing committees on supporting individuals and families and what we can do additionally to support rent supports moving forward. We had one of our committees today on the business community, the business side, recommended the grant program and the artist program that I ran through earlier. So we are constantly looking for more ways to help our residents, and certainly that's top of the list for what might be on the horizon. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, County Executive and Director Anderson. We have additional questions that have been submitted, but because of time constraints, we're going to keep on moving. I'm going to send it back to Senator Shelley Heddleman, who has a larger pool of questions for the whole panel.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you so much, County Executive. I got a couple more questions I'm going to toss your way. Will Baltimore County require and enforce the use of masks in all public places? We know the governor has required them inside retail places and for essential workers if folks are close together, and in public transit also. But this person happens to think that's not enough and was just wondering if you would take any further steps along those lines.
Yeah, so not just on masks, but also on things like gathering size and social distancing. We have a work group in place through our EOC That includes police, fire, and the health department. Fortunately, to date, we've only had 2 cease and desist orders we've had to issue in terms of complaints to date. We're actually, through our police chief, Melissa Hyatt, focused on doing education over enforcement. And so we're actually providing masks and we are educating people rather than trying to put people in jail or give them a citation. So fortunately to date, that has been successful and has worked. Obviously that is an option, but our preference is to educate the public on the importance of following these orders and providing them with the resources to do so. And that has worked to date.
Thank you. Another question has come in about concerns about the immigrant community. And we know that many people who are in our communities and might be paying taxes and may well be undocumented are not going to have access to some of the resources that are coming out of the federal government or the state government. So just wondered what sorts of resources there may be for the immigrant community in Baltimore County.
Yeah, so we have, again, a separate committee focused on individuals and families. That's actually being headed up by one of the deputy directors in Health and Human Services, Terry Hickey. And our undocumented community is one of the areas where we are actually actively looking to provide supports in addition to things like rent support. So these are all really great issues that residents are raising on tonight's call. And it's all part of what local government should do, is to find those gaps where the federal government and the state government is not responding, to step up and meet those needs. And that's really what we're trying to do. So we're going to work with Mr. Hickey and that committee, as well as you, Senator, and the District 11 team to figure out what the needs are and fill those gaps.
Okay, thank you. What health resources does the county have for uninsured residents? There are lots of concerns that, and you see this in the media widely, that COVID-19, even if we get it tamped down as best as we can now, may reoccur in the fall at the same time as the flu. And they're just worried about availability of shots for seniors and the confluence of the flu and continuation of COVID-19. And just wondered if you could talk a little bit about the health resources available through the county health department.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Gregory Branch is our health officer. He and Della Leister, our deputy officer, are doing tremendous work in this space. We've always been out there pushing and promoting flu vaccinations, and so we will continue to do that. And I will say that to the extent there are needs out there in the communities, we want to make sure we're providing those. We obviously share the concern about a potential respike as we open back up, but we will continue to be supportive of the needs out there. Our health department and human services department remains on standby to support our communities. And to the last question, I apologize. I also meant to I'll give a shout out to Allie for her food drive and the Amigos of Baltimore County. They are doing incredible work. So we really truly thank them for their efforts and their partnership here in Baltimore County.
Thank you very much. We have a couple of other questions. I'm going to toss this back over to Delegate Stein, who has a question, I believe, for Secretary Schultz. Are you still on the line?
I happen to be on the line, yes.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Secretary, this is a question that comes from Linda in zip code 21136. We know that the governor had that reopening of businesses and gradual easing of the stay-at-home directive will happen in stages. And similarly, the types of businesses that will be able to open up will vary in each stage. So as businesses, different types of businesses are able to open up, will there be guidance or directives from the governor's office or your office concerning public safety practices that companies should observe to protect their employees and protect the public, especially as we talk about businesses that typically in the past have had relied on large gatherings of people, be it restaurants or bars or theaters?
Thank you, Delegate. And yes, that's a very important question, and one that we are addressing on a minute-by-minute basis. And I'm really happy to say that some of those very, very local establishments have been represented on our advisory groups in order to be able to provide us with some information on what their standard operating procedures are at this point in time, and not only what they are at this point, but what they are agreeing to do or what they think is necessary to do in the future if they were to open up under certain restricted circumstances. So yes, they are all being listened to, and they will all be considered when the governor and his internal advisory team looks at the recovery process and how we are to be able to move forward with a very phased in approach, understanding the necessity of having a gradual type of recovery when it comes to Maryland businesses and economic development.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Secretary, I know the governor announced his recovery approach last week during his press conference, and I know he put out a report. Could you refer people to where they might take a look at that report and find out too about the different groups that are going to be making recommendations to various industries?
Sure, I could off the top of my head tell you that if they go to the governor's homepage, the governor of the state of Maryland, Governor Larry Hogan, they can find the overall approach with the business community that's there. The advisory groups are also a part of that announcement that he made last Friday. And there are 13 advisory groups that the Department of Commerce is overseeing. And that is everything under the kind of the guidance of our tourism offices. And then additionally, manufacturing, construction, development, professional services, personal services, which is those one-on-one type of services like hair salons, tattoos, and such. And those are the individual organizations that are going to be able to help to provide some suggested best practices for those industries, made up of all of the small businesses across the state in every corner of the state, and demographics included.
Okay.
If, however, somebody would like to add some comments to those particular industry groups, and they think that they have a very specific position that they would like to take on that, I would be happy to address those recommendations if somebody would like to send them to me personally, and we can connect them with the industry groups themselves. And that would be kelly.schulz, SCHULZ, @maryland.gov. And I would be happy to be able to connect them with those particular industry organizations.
Great, thank you very much. I wonder if you also might be able to talk a little bit about, it might be a little outside of your wheelhouse, but it's certainly dealing with employees who might be in nursing homes and other areas that are going to require maybe a little more attention, since they have very many vulnerable people and in close proximity, and employees coming in and out, just sort of what special attention those kind of close living arrangements might be getting.
Yeah, so there's been executive orders from the governor's office in close conjunction with the Department of Health, and so that is a little bit out of my wheelhouse. And so those very, very specific, I guess, contacts with those agencies internally, it has been very specifically designed. But I would say moving forward with employees overall, we have incorporated members of various employee unions into our process of looking at how to move forward with a reopening and recovery structure, because we know that that is very, very important for the organizations and the employees who are having concerns about going back into the workforce. And not only is that important for the businesses in the industry and the economic recovery, but it's important for the individuals to be able to understand that they can come back to work, to be able to have a continuance of their career opportunity, which is very, very important. Obviously, as we know, me coming from the Department of Labor and having spent 4 years there, it's a very, very strong recommendation that we get people out of the unemployment world and we get them into re-employment, which means that they go back to their previous employers when those businesses start to open up, so that they can all have a future in economic recovery. And that's very important to us here at the Department of Commerce. I know it's very important at the Department of Labor, and I know it's very important to the governor.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Secretary. Senator Cardin, are you still with us? Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
You are. Okay, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what you see coming down the pike from the federal government, whether the House and the Senate will be able to come to agreement. I know there was just passed another round last week, but I know there were hopes for some larger pool of resources for both businesses and individuals, since the earlier rounds have gone so quickly and the need is so great. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about sort of what you see in the next week or two or month coming down from Congress.
Well, we're working on the next stimulus package now, so there's active work being done. We recognize there's still much more work that needs to be done. Let me just give you a couple examples. We did not include the next round for state and local in the bill we just passed, and County Executive Olszewski is absolutely right. We do not allow the use of the monies that we've given to the county to cover revenue loss, and we need to correct that. We need to provide more flexibility and more funds for state and local governments. That's one of our top priorities. We also need to deal with the SNAP program. We know that we're going to need more flexibility for those who are the most vulnerable in regards to food and nutrition programs. We need to do something with election security. So we know that's another major issue now that we're doing a lot more voting by mail. These are extra costs involved. The federal government needs to make sure that our most fundamental principles of democracy, free and fair elections, are maintained through November. So that's another area of great need. We're not yet finished in regards to the needs of our healthcare community. I can tell you that our hospitals are really hurting financially. Our healthcare centers, our qualified health centers, our community health centers all need additional attention. And then our economy is still going to need additional help. So we recognize that as important as the PPP program and as much money as we put into it, including the EIDL program, that it's likely we're going to have to put more resources in. But what we want to do next is to tier that help to those small businesses that need it the most, that have the need, that have had the greatest revenue losses. That's where we want to sort of concentrate our efforts so that we can have a transition from the current tools to when our economy is performing at a level where businesses once again can compete and be viable based upon customers coming by and using their services and providing their goods. So yes, there's a lot more work we need to do, and we're going to start working on it immediately.
I'm gonna ask you maybe a little bit of a question outside the scope of the immediate focus here on small business, but I think it's relevant because it as the governor has recognized and the federal government has recognized, what we need to do in order to open back up is have a very focused effort on testing, on contact tracing. And so much of what has stymied our testing abilities, getting the materials that are necessary to do some broad testing. And just wondered, it seems to me that some of that is wrapped up in the Defense Production Act and perhaps the president's unwillingness to get private industry to focus on making some of the materials and the reagents and the swabs and the transportation materials that need to go into allowing us to do the broad testing ability that we should do to open back up our economy. And I just wonder, Senator, if you have any insight at the federal level about actions to enable us to do that.
Shelley, you're absolutely right. We need greater testing capacity. Once we reopen government, we have to be able to do testing at business locations to make sure it's safe for workers to return. We have to have a much broader availability of testing. We have to have protocols as to who needs to be tested and how often they need to be tested. For a test is only good for that moment. We have to make sure that a workplace stays safe for people to be there. And there is no excuse at all as to why we did not at the national level have a strategy for testing months ago. Literally a couple of months ago, we should have put this into the type of production so that we had widespread testing available. But instead, this administration said everything was fine. I've been working very closely with Governor Hogan. He'll tell you that we do not have enough testing capacity in Maryland, and he's used extraordinary methods in order to try to get the capacity in the state of Maryland. I'm on the phone every single week with our regional FEMA director to go over the needs for additional testing supplies. She acknowledges that there's a shortage in every community in the country, that we don't have enough testing. We need to have every element of the testing. You might have a test kit, but if you don't have the reagents, that's not going to help you. You need to have the ability to have a protocol that allows for reasonable testing in a community as we reopen our society so that we can discover anyone who's infected, be able to trace that person, and to be able to ensure that we don't have a return of a wave of the coronavirus in our community. And we're not there, and we should have been there by now. Congress just appropriated another $25 billion last week to develop that strategy and to get it implemented. And we want to hold oversight hearings on this with this administration starting next week. We've got to do a much better job in helping our states have the capacity to reopen by having the capacity to test.
I know one of the things that the county executive has been really interested in, and I think the federal delegation has been in support of opening up the GM plant. And I wonder if you could shine a little light on what the progress is on urging the federal government and GM to do that over in White Marsh.
Well, yeah, absolutely. That's a wonderful facility. It's a modern facility. It has the capacity to help us deal with the COVID-19. We certainly can do construction there. We can do manufacturing there. We can do assembly there. There's a lot of things that we can do. There's still part of a workforce that is available and wants to work and could have jobs. So absolutely, we've made that known to the FEMA and to the national sources. And I know that the county exec's been working with our economic development people to make it clear that we're ready to be as flexible as possible to use that capacity.
Okay.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
Senator Hettleman, Senator Cardin, and the entire federal delegation have been incredible partners across the board. But this is another example where the delegation has gone to bat, supporting our request that the president and the administration support our efforts to get things up and running at a plant that really is, as Senator Cardin pointed out, prime for production. And so as we can respond to needs out there, we can meet both the health needs and the economic needs. We're going to continue to find ways to partner. And I want to thank Senator Cardin and the entire federal team here in Maryland for doing a great job there as well, as they always do. But we'll keep pushing. We have not gotten a formal answer from GM or the president, but I think it was important to float the idea, and it's worth having the discussion. So our team has been great.
And Johnny, I want to thank you as a resident of Baltimore County. I want to thank you for your clear leadership here and the clear messaging you have been to the people of Baltimore County to keep us safe. Keep up the good work. It's great to be all on the same team on this issue.
Thank you, Senator. That means so much.
I agree. Thank you. Unless I'm just going to toss it real quickly back to my colleagues and see if anyone else from the District 11 team has any last questions so we can wrap up by the time we promise to do so.
No questions for me, but really quickly, I just wanted to say to the community while you're watching, this is one of my first events in front of you as a delegate for District 11. So I just wanted to share that it's an absolute honor to have the opportunity to represent you in the House of Delegates. And when we come out on the other side of this, I look forward to meeting each of you at your community events. Thank you to everyone that came out tonight. And this was a great event. Thank you.
Senator Hettleman, if I can just chime in real quick, I just want to say that as we move towards the fall or the summer and the fall, and we see how things move and how our county executive moves the county in terms of changes. I want to think about the election coming up in November and figure out sort of making sure that we're doing it both safely and effectively and create confidence. So maybe we ought to think about doing something as a team to make sure that's happening in our district.
Absolutely.
And Shelley, I'll just say that we all know that there's a huge amount of distress out there in our state, in the country, both health-wise as well as economic-wise. Many people have lost their jobs, businesses are seriously at risk. And so I just want to say I appreciate the nonstop effort that our local and state and federal officials have been making on behalf of everyone. It's a humongous task to try to respond to this, but I think that everyone is truly working round the clock to try to deal with it as best that we can. So a big thank you.
Great, thank you. I just want to, a couple of closing remarks. First, I just want to say thank you to all of my colleagues and to all of the panelists who joined us this evening, Senator Cardin, Secretary Schultz, Andrew and Michael from the Department of Labor, County Executive Johnny Olszewski and Will Anderson from the department, the county's Economic Development Department. I just want to also just mention a couple of the efforts that my colleagues and I as a District 11 team have done over the past couple of weeks. We created a Facebook page called Need a Hand, Lend a Hand. If folks in the community need help with something, we have a list of volunteers who are able to help you out in a safe way. We've also been promoting local restaurants who are open and providing takeout service. We're going to kick off a new effort called Takeout Tuesdays, promoting these local small businesses and urging folks to post on social media next Tuesday where you might be ordering takeout from. We can help those folks. And we've gotten lots of ideas from the people who signed up for this virtual town hall tonight about topics for a future town hall. So we are going to be coming together and deciding what those should be. I want to let you know that as soon as we wrap up, we're going to be putting on the website all of the contact information for the folks, the panelists who joined us tonight, as well as our contact information, phone numbers, and emails. And finally, you can go to my website, which is shelleyhedelman.com, for a list of resources. We have a COVID-19 section of the website, and I think almost all of the resources and links that were mentioned tonight will be featured on that website. So again, thank you to everyone. Stay safe, stay home, stay healthy. And we know that there are lots of folks out there who are hurting, and our offices and the folks on this panel tonight from the federal, state, and local governments are doing our best to try and help you out. So please be in touch and be well. Thank you again for joining us.